So I want to start off this video by saying that J.D. Vance ain't from here, and neither is Donald Trump. But here lately, both of them have been going out of their way to defend the Confederacy, and that's ironic because they both took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, but yet they're suddenly becoming apologists for the Confederacy who worked to destroy the very Union that they were supposed to be sworn to protect. So it's pretty obvious why that they're doing this, but we're going to go in here and we're going to break down this article from MidasNews.com. J.D. Vance recently went on the comedian Theo Von's podcast, and he loves going on there, and I believe the reason is because he can come off looking more normal to all the bros, because Theo Von is never really going to throw J.D. very much of a curveball, and if he was to, J.D. can lie to him and it'll just go right over his head. So J.D. loves to go on there and cut up with Theo Von in an attempt to look normal, but he's not, and here he is defending the absolute worst parts of the South, the parts that so many of us have worked overtime to put in the dustbin of history where it belongs. So what J.D. Vance is really doing and what Donald Trump is really doing is showing the world that their ideology aligns more with the Confederacy than it does with the Union they were supposed to be protecting, and we all know truly deep down why they're suddenly becoming Southern apologists. It's pretty obvious, but we're going to break down this article here on MidasNews.com, and this one was written by J.D. Wolf. J.D. Vance defends Confederate soldiers and the internet reacts. The Confederacy fought to preserve slavery in the Civil War. On a recent episode of This Past Weekend with Theo Von, J.D. Vance defended those who fought for the Confederacy, saying this: I feel like something happened like 10 years ago where it's like you have to think that every single person who fought for the Confederate side was an evil person. I just think that is so stupid. Well, I want to break in real quick and say this. I don't think that everyone who fought for the Confederacy was an evil person. A lot of people fought for it for a lot of different reasons. I don't think that everyone at heart that fought for the Confederacy was evil, but you cannot deny the fact that the Confederacy was fighting to preserve one of the most evil institutions that was ever put on mankind, and that's slavery. So they might not have been evil at heart, but they were on the wrong side of history, and there's no other way to say it. So getting back here to the article, Vance's comments echo some in MAGA circles who attempt to reframe or soften the legacy of those who fought to preserve slavery. Social media users reacted to Vance's comments. Now, Midas Touch editor-in-chief Ron Filipkowski emphasized that J.D. Vance was employing a dishonest technique to win arguments. Ron emphasized, we are saying that we shouldn't give special honors to the leaders who caused 750,000 American deaths to preserve slavery while then claiming it was about something else. On down here, political commentary, John Collins reacted, Confederate apologist is a weird stance for the Vice President of the United States. The Republican Party used to emphasize being the party of Lincoln a lot more than it does now. Yeah, they've completely moved past the idea of being the party of Lincoln, and we all can see exactly why. Journalist Jim Stewartson wrote, Donald Trump announced to Fort Bragg that he was reinstating the name Robert E. Lee, who murdered more American soldiers than Hitler did. This is about normalizing treason against the United States. Ask yourself, why would they want to do that? One person on TikTok said the Confederates knew what they were fighting for and fighting against. They were fighting against the very Union that he is the vice president of now. Another person posted the Confederate Party wanted to dissolve the United States of America. The Confederacy was fighting to break away from America. Literal enemies of the United States could not be more basic. Another person commented and said, really crazy it is for the Vice President of the United States to be defending enemies of the country. Vance also defends pardoning those who stormed the Capitol building on January 6th. And that's pretty much where we're going to be going with this. If you can pretty much already tell that's where we're headed. That's why they're trying so hard to normalize this. Another pointed out how J.D. Vance believes slavery and the fight to preserve it was still considered noble. Yes, appreciate this accurate recounting of history by J.D. Vance, wherein slavery and the fight to preserve it was considered noble until Check's Notes 2015. It's interesting to note that 2015 is also the year that Trump announced his run for Republican run for president at a time when J.D. Vance was calling him America's Hitler. But folks, to get down into just to cut right through all the bullshit and get down to the point of this story. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are defending the Confederacy because what they're trying to do is normalize treason. What we saw on January 6th, we saw Donald Trump brainwash his followers into believing that the 2020 election was stolen until he got them to show up at the Capitol and then told them, go down there and fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country. They went down there and did what they did. We all saw what they did. And then when Donald Trump got back into power, he pardoned every one of them, despite the fact that a lot of them were violent criminals before that day, and they were violent criminals after that day, because when they were pardoned and put back out onto the streets, it was no time flat till they were right back in trouble with the law again, because that's what they were from day one. And Donald Trump knew this, and instead of distancing himself from them, he doubled down. Because without that type of person, he doesn't have a base. Donald Trump is not ever going to try to say that the Republicans are the party of Lincoln. That's gone. They're not even the party of George W. Bush anymore. Have you ever stepped outside and felt like you were instantly drenched in sweat? Folks, I live here in Tennessee, and trust me, I know all about the heat and humidity. I cannot count the times that I've stepped outside at 7 o'clock in the morning to do my work, and by 7:15, I'm standing there drenched. Recently, I switched to Mando, and now I no longer have those problems. But if you've been struggling with the heat and humidity like I have, then I have some great news. Mando has just launched something that takes sweat control to the next level. Introducing Mando Deodorant Plus Sweat Control Solid Stick. It's double protection. Finally, you get the odor control you love with Mando, plus powerful sweat control. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code Brando at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. Shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. Again, use code Brando at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. Go to shopmando.com and tell them Brando sent you. They're completely removed from that, and they're over here now in a place where they're going out of their way to defend treason. If they can soften the language and rename all of these army bases after Confederate generals and say that, well, the Confederacy, they weren't evil people. They were just, fighting for noble causes. If they can find a way to normalize that and same-wash that to the people, then they can also use that same logic to normalize and same-wash what they did, and we're never going to let them off the hook for doing so. What J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are doing, and by the way, I'm going to keep driving this point home, neither one of them are from here. What they are doing is they're using the very worst of the South, because the worst of the South is what best aligns with their ideology. I grew up here. I heard all of the arguments growing up to defend the Civil War. The true Southern apologists don't even refer to it as the Civil War. They will call it the War for Southern Independence. And they will tell you that all the South wanted to do was break away from the Union so that they could have states' rights. When you press them hard enough, you'll realize that it was states' rights to own other human beings. But they don't tell you that necessarily. They just try to stick to, it was about states' rights. It was about different things. It really wasn't about slavery. And then they will say, well, the North owned slaves too. They try every way under the sun to spin it to justify their stance. And we, over the years, had to come to grips with a lot of uncomfortable truths, things that we really didn't like hearing or admitting out loud. When you grow up here, you're brought up by hardworking people who love you and take care of you. They're always there for you. They're putting food on your table. And they are repeating ignorance. They are repeating stuff that was handed down that's not true. And you tend to believe it because you're growing up around these good, honest people who you don't think would ever be on the wrong side of history. And it's hard for you to imagine that your ancestors could have been. But the truth of the matter is they were, and you have to come to grips with those things. You have to come to grips with it, and in order to move past it, you can never move past the issues that we have. You can't leave those things there and just ignore them or act like that we fought for different reasons. No, the South did fight to preserve slavery. Full stop. That's what happened. Okay? And you can try to twist it any way you want to. And down through the years, people have tried so hard to twist it to, well, it's just my heritage. And I've always argued, no, it's not your heritage. It is a 5-year window of time in American history. It is a stain on your American heritage. This bandana, I ordered it in 2018, okay? It's held out a long time. This bandana on my head is older than the Confederacy, okay? So it's not your heritage. It is a dark stain on American history. And the Confederacy that was back then is no different than the MAGA that is there today. They're trying to go against the rule of law. They're trying to go against the way that our government is supposed to work, and they're trying to go against the very union that they say that they're out to protect. But think about it this way. If you want to use the argument that, well, it's our heritage, it's not J.D. Vance's heritage. It's not Donald Trump's heritage. So why are they suddenly aligning so hard with Confederates? It's because the ideology of the Confederates best aligns with Trump and with Vance. What we're seeing going on in Los Angeles right now is the Confederates' wet dream. That's what they all envisioned doing, okay? That's what they all wanted, and that's what Trump and Vance best aligns with. You can't sit and twist this anymore to, well, it's our heritage. It's not Vance and Trump's heritage. They are capitalizing on the very worst of us, and they're exploiting the very worst of us. When you show up at a protest waving your Confederate flag in the air, you can sit there all day long and say, I'm just here to defend my heritage. But when you have Nazis standing beside you waving the swastika, buddy, you're on the wrong side of history and there's no way to slice it. Okay? You can no longer use the heritage argument if you're standing next to that dude because it's not his heritage. It's everything that our grandfathers fought against. And at the end of the day, we have to leave those things in the dustbin of history where they belong and stop trying to normalize and same-wash it. But that's what Trump and Vance is trying to do here by appealing to the Southern apologists, by appealing to the very worst of the South. You won't see Vance and Trump ever sit down with Southern people who disagree with this. You will never see them sit down with people born and raised here who wants to move past this and do better and be better. You know, there's a lot of stuff that we have to start down here in the South, and we have to live up to, and we have to move away from, and we have to live down. There's so much stuff that we need to live up to and also live down at the same time. It's not easy growing up here because you do have to confront your past, and you have to be willing to look at it for what it was, and you have to be willing to accept it. Sometimes it's not comfortable. Sometimes it makes you feel really bad, but we were on the wrong side of history. Just like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the MAGA movement is on the wrong side of history today. When they invaded our nation's capital, they were on the wrong side of history. When the Confederacy broke away and tried to tear down the Union and destroy this country, they were on the wrong side of history. And I can say that as someone that was born right here. J.D. Vance, Donald Trump wasn't. They're not using this because it's their heritage. They're using this to further push their hatred and to exploit hatred. And those are the type of people you never hear Trump call out a white supremacist. You never hear him call out hatred, ever. He doubles down because that's his base now. They're not the party of Lincoln. Hell, they're not even the party of Reagan or George W. Bush. They are now the MAGA party, and they're filled with hate, and they will go out of their way to go back into history and defend as many hateful assholes as they possibly can. It's truly disgusting. It's despicable that they would look to us and exploit us, but that's what grifters do. That's what they've been doing for years. They come down here, they grift our culture, and they use the worst of us against us. And people like me that was born and bred here, we find it offensive, and we're always going to call bullshit on it.